is, so we're starting now the second in the Maimer of Freitag zur Nacht was from Sivov, and in Motzei Shabbos from Siv Zayin, how Biprotius Shem Tzvokis is Megala the Etzem. It's Megala the Eitzeres, and the Eitzeres will be Rishon Mayim B'Sretzach B'derech Klal, and the Pnimis HaNefesh. So, really, in the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer, this is the Iker. In other words, what the Rebbe daar eingelegt is L'chure a kind of Hagdome to the Inyan. As in the Maimer Netzach, when getting from Bizbuz Eitzeres, that when it comes to Netzach is Megale the Etzem HaNefesh, so the name Tzvokis, which is Netzach V'Heid, really has a high Sheiresh. So the Rebbe gives us a Hagdome as L'chure B'chlal the Inyan of Shemes Rirton in Netzach. And Netzach V'Heid is more specifically. What's that help this Hagdome? Is L'chure, darf man etwas sagen, als das Wort, that the whole first part of the Maimer is just saying that it's Shem Rirton Netzach. It's not Megala Etzem. And that's the Chidush of Netzach V'Heid, that is Megalas, is Mamshech Etzem. You see the Keach and the Takef which comes out in Netzach V'Heid. So it's Kilo, because of this Akdome, of saying that Shem is Bechlal Rirton Etzem, it sharpens the Chidush of Netzach V'Heid. So before we get involved in the Proteya in Yonim, and especially the way it's over here in the Bosi Legani Tavshin Yud, and the way that the Rebbe touched up, and there's Emek Lefnim Yemek, and throughout the years also there was different Eifanim how the Rebbe touched up was the Bizbuz Eitzeres V'chulu. Mistam it's Kedai to first a bissel room raten outside of the Maimer, more Bechlal V'Sretzach Netzach V'Heid. The way it's in Pesach Tavshin Tes, and the way it's in Omer Reveshe Tavshin Yud Dalet, on Frier, just Bechlal to get Clark at what we're talking about, and then we'll come back to this whole mashal of the Melech, the ways in Mevazah says. But before we begin, just one word, which is it's an interesting thing to note. The Hemshech Bosi Legani Tavshin Yud is really from Tavresh Pei Gimel. Yeah, and it was said in two Shabboses, Parshas Bo and Parshas B'Shalach. Which, even Klali, if you look at the Hemshech and Yonim, these 20 ACs, it's really two different in Yonim. There's Bo and there's B'Shalach. What connects them? It's the word of Dir B'Tachtein. So the whole first part of the Hemshech, which is the first 10 parakim, Parshas Bo Hestes, is as Dir B'Tachtein is Ibekeren, the Klippe, the Shtustik Dusha, and it goes through that this is in of Karbonis, this is in Beis Hamikdash, this is in of the Kroshim, this is for taking aces of Sheker and making Keresh, this is taking the Atishitim, Shtustik Dusha, to Shtustik Klippe. In other words, Dir B'Tachteinim is Skafi V'Ishapche, which is going to be Mamshich, the Iker Shchine soll zurückkommen back to Tachtein. That's all, was is Dir B'Tachtein. Then comes the Maimer Bei, wer can machen Dir B'Tachtein. And that's the Uftu of Ayit. And over here begins a whole new Mahalach as Netzach, Shem Tzvokes, more specifically, like the Rebbe said over here Friday night, that the Iker Abir is this word of Netzach V'Heid, that's the Iker Inyan of Tzova is Meloshen Chayil. And das ist Ayit. Ayit is Mitzivus Hashem. And Memela, because he's Mushrish in Hetze, and the Keiches, the Eitzer Elyon, the Eitzer Shir Shamayim V'chulu, the Far had the Keiach to do the Aved of Dir B'Tachtein. Now, what's interessant is, I mean, just Derech Agav, in Samach Vav, it's actually a similar Chalukah. You know, there's the first 52 Mamorim, was is Dir B'Tachtein, and Mamshech the Hel Ma'atzmi, through Aved V'Keach Atzmi, and then there's the Ma'il of Yid, Shamas of Malachim, Verken the Stone. Now, what's interesting is that as Mizokt, that the Rebbe, our Rebbe, was there for the second Maimer, for B'Shalach. So I don't know if it's, I heard maybe it was the first Maimer that the Rebbe was there. I heard from the Friedrich Rebbe Akopanim, was certainly one of the first. Now, was noch mehr interessant is I came Tofresh Peites, so I came Yudalit Kislev. So this is obviously on some level, and it's on in Nirubar, it's the beginning of Deir Shvi, or setting the Yisayis, the seed. The Frierdiker Rebbe said in the Maimer again, this same inyan, the inyan of Bizbuz Eitzres and the Maila of Netzach. And that's the Omer Rebbe Shir in Peites, and the Rebbe Chazet, Yudalit, and a few times Yudalit Kislev, Yutes Kislev, the Hemshech to that. The Noch is a noch a prat. The fact is that the Hemshech Bosi Legani Tovshin Yud, the Frierdiker Rebbe printed. And obviously the Rebbe did it, but it was the Alpi Hayroeh from the Frierdiker Rebbe. It came out for Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud. What came out? The first 10 parakim. What came out then was for Yud Shvat and for there's two Mamorim, one to the Yud Shvat, and the close Indian is basically Parshas Bay Tavresh Begin. The Rebbe for Purim and for Beis Nissen put out the Hemshech, which is Beshalach Tavresh Begin. In other words, the first or one of the first Mamorim that the Rebbe heard from the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Maimer of the Rebbe's Chassidus, and the first Maimer that the Rebbe printed in Tovshin Yud, says in Deir Shvi, is this in. It's a paladike Zach. In other words, Fun Siv Yud Aleph hebt sich on, I don't know if it's whatever, if it's richtig to say, but there's certainly something over here that this, the Aveda of Deir Shvi, there's a special yichus of this inyan of being megale, the Eitzer Elyon in the Nefesh, the Bizbuz Eitzeres, is Sheiches b'miyuchet to unser Deir. And Take b'metzias, the Rebbe spoke about that a lot of times. So it wasn't like a psaza, only a Yud Shvat Sugi. It came up again and again on a different signenis. Sometimes the Bizbuz Eitzeres meant, like it says, b'pashtos Yishamayim. Sometimes it meant Chassidus. That was one of the chidushim of the Rebbe. Was versteht nicht früher. That the Eitzer is the Rabbi are giving or being Megalach Chassidus. There wasn't Tavshin Yud, Nissen, Beis Nissen, I think, or Pesach, Tavshin Yud. The Rebbe said, as the Mashal Chayev Mineged, that is that the Rebbe is this, if the soldiers don't do the job properly, so that's why Tavshin Yud Shvat happened. The Rebbe said it very bestructured. It was then. The Rebbe said it again also, I think, Tavshin Tezvov. The singing. So there's differences. Sometimes the Moshel of the Melech is the Rebbe. Sometimes the Melech is the Eibishter, and the Rebbe is the Reish Pkidei Achayil, which is like in our mind, Tosha Chafalov. So there's differences in Knechah, but that's a klar, that's a Yesod. This thing that we're going to be learning now is a Agresi Yesod in Chassidus, and in Deir Shvi specifically, there's a big Yesod in the Rebbe's Torah. Okay. So what we'll do is, we'll start Eshens Bepashtos being Masakin in Yonim, even though it's very Bavusta Zachen. So we'll go Menakalo Lakovit, just to chew over Bepashtos. What is the difference? What is the Taich Netzach and Bepashtos? What does it mean that it's connected to its Shadish? Then we'll come to this Mashal. And next week, we'll be able to Zechmer reinlegen in the Prati Advarim. But you have to work Menakal La Prat, Menakal Lakovit. The Pashtus Netzach V'Heit is Chitzenis. Just like everything in Nefesh could be found in Guf, so the Netzach V'Heit is the train shaking. So if the Chesed Gvura is the Zreya, Chesed Drei Yamina, Gvura Drei Smola, so that's like part of the person. That's how a person expresses himself, is through his hands. His feet are Eshtens, the more grub. That's the more coarse, and they feel the elements less. You could put them into hot water of a chulu. Another zach is that they fit in the mensch where will gain. but they can't do anything able. And that's the terrain shaking, pashut, netzach v'heit shebenefesh. Which means benefesh adam, that a person has bichlal kech aseichel, midas, and then he has another part of himself, which is a simple part. The word of this thing is what we call, if it's in nefesh alikis, it's called the nefesh ruach neshama. So ruach neshama is midas ameich, and the nefesh is just the pashtus of the nefesh. What is the what is the mile in them? Why do I need nefesh? What's not good enough ruach neshama? So sagt man anachanami, alibe de'emes mile sa'adam is meichin amidis. But practically speaking, in order for a person to be able to do something, so he needs to have train shaking. So the dugma l'moshel Rav and a Talmud, in order for a Rav to give over to the Talmud, so benes is the fact that he has to have seichel, and he has to want to give over v'chulu, he has to have a what's called the klois hayetzis, which is pashut to transmit the seichel. Now that chush is not a chush in seichel, it's fakir, it's a chush in hamchoshe, in simplifying something, in taking a seichel and making it pashut. So it's what we would call the practical part of a person. Now this is, let's be magdir clearly, we're not talking about ma'aseh b'pei. We're not talking about malchus. Malchus is machshava dibur ma'aseh. What we're talking about over here is that there's a chelik from the nefesh was in yoni is inyan ha'ma'aseh. Meaning, if we'll be mamcheshit, there are, just like you have people, there's a personality which is a sichlistic person, there's a personality of midas, and then there's something called a personality of ma'aseh. He's a practical person. Everything he hears, the only way he understands it is you give him a dugma. Now, what's a dugma in the world of seichel? It's the practical part of seichel. So, al derech zeh in life bichlal, he's nimshich to ma'aseh. In other words, there's a nafshistic experience of ma'aseh. It's a ma'aseh, that's how he measures success. That's how he has sipuk. This is what gets him going. Ma'aseh. There could also sometimes be a lot of chochmah in ma'aseh. L'mashal, you could have a genius, but if you ask him, how do you take this table through the door? So he doesn't know which way to twist it. And there is something called the chochmah in netzach v'heit, because it's a part of shalom, like every sphere, just like you have chochmah in chesed, you have so it's what's called seichel ma'aseh. So it's practical seichel, and it's a kind of personality, and every person really also has this in his nefesh. This inyan ha'ma'aseh sheba adam is kumuven. If I don't have it, I'm a balmum. Sometimes you have a person who's a sichli and a balhergish, but he doesn't have a practical side to him. He's missing something out. Not just b'peil mamish, he's a battle and certain things are not going to get done with tevase. He's partially missing out on a certain part of life, just like a person who has meichen and doesn't have midas. He's a psatrukene mensch, it's a felt midas. So there is a person who has meichen and midas and doesn't have a chush in practicality. So there's an element of nefesh which he hasn't accessed, which he hasn't experienced properly. Is the sikkum, just let's get clear with the nukude, was Mvilda is bringing is that it's not the ma'aseh b'peil of machshav dibra ma'aseh, which is levushi and nefesh. Mered dam nefesh. But it's talking about the chelik ha-nefesh which in yoni mont and needs and pushes for ma'aseh. And this is true in nefesh bichlal and in the world of seichel befrat, the inyan of ashpa. Now, Lepayil, Zetman, that even though this is the lowest chelik of the nefesh, let's just add one more word. In the development of the person, you see that a person develops melmata lamayil. So first, for a young age, bichlal children in yonam is practical, right? And you can't explain to a child the midah. If you tell a child, Avos Yisrael, Avos was the rest. Avos Yisrael means practically share with somebody else, or shlognisht, or it's saying something pelmamishdik. And that's the way he touches up in his head. He can say, in Rosh Hashanah this morning, versteht nicht andere Sprach. And then he develops becomes a mitzvah person. And then there's a musig of real interest in Seichel. To Ladasa Saemes. Sumar Menech. Al derech ze beprotius is kipshutim when a child is born. So there's the first shlaf before he's born is v'chinas ibur. The state is that he's reshe ben birkov. So just like we said, train shaking. This is the part of the guf which is kineg netzach v'hei. So his head and his heart is kipshute. It's wrapped up. It's covered over by his feet. Meaning, as kolin yoni is netzach v'hei. Because what is the tafkid and the purpose of the life of a Uber? To exist. The Pearl Mamish to essen. The Pearl Mamish to just be, to not be. Das ist Kolin Yon. Noch is da, so kommt da raus, so it starts developing what's called Yenike. So it's Yenik, the Gashmis, Yenik Cholov from the mother, and but in the Teichen Inyan it means that it's taking in Inyan which is going to develop him, which is already midas, he's becoming a Psametzias. Then there's a Hecheret Seichel that's like as a child starts asking questions and starts growing. When he's 10 dam dogon, so it's already when he's 2 years old or older, that's when he starts speech, dibur, which is Seichel. So that's the development of a person. Adkan is bepashtus, the Inyan of Netzach v'Heit, the way we would say it before the uftu of Chassidus over here. B'mitzia zetmen, that Chotch Netzach v'Heit is lower. You see that the Netzach v'Heit reaches into a deeper place in the person and it has a medike kayach, which Meichen Amidas don't have. And that's expressed in a few things. First of all, Pashat in consistency. You see that Midas, Milosh and Medida, by definition, the measure of a Midah, which that's what Midah means, constantly changes. So you have, you develop a Ava, and then the Ava goes down, and it's dynamic. That's the way the world of Midas is, as a Afila Seichel, which is l'chura more stable. I mean, if it makes sense, so it makes sense. I've been convinced. Aber kumovn, there's something called changing your mind. And fakert, a real person who's learning, who hasn't changed his mind in any sugya, is the taich is that he's not learning. A real person who's learning should change. Seichel is open-minded. Afila rotzen, afila tifen nefesh, these things are always soft. There's a musik of pnimis rotzen, a chitzenis rotzen, bimon is gala, lesson is gala. There's always going to be shinui. Masha'enkin over here, that's what Apala de Kezach. The musik of Netzach v'Heit is Masha Hoya Hushayir. There's a certain consistency, reliability, which there is in Netzach, which there is in Pelmamsh. Like you see in a Pelmamishdika person, I'm saying if we're going to meet a personality of a Pelmamishdika mensch, Zetman as wie er arbeitet. As wird die Arbeit nechten arbeit. A person which deals in hergish, yeah, someone who deals in art, or in poetry, or chves, is a mechaber nigunim. Jeden Tag is a andere Tag. Every day is a different Welt. In Seichel sagt sicher, every day is growing, it's changing. And then there are people which their personality is as was sie gewähnt, das es sein. Because this is who as is a gestalt. That's why, I mean, there's a mile in Netzach V'Heit, in pastures. Yeah, you ask any person, you'd say, it could be, you could say, he's there klug, and there out, but he's not stable. He's not stable. He's not a reliable person. Then you can have a person which is a pashut mensch, versteht sehr wenig, but he's reliable, he's responsible. He's going to be there on time. And this is an inyan in nefesh of strength, which doesn't exist higher in nefesh, in meichen amitis. And it's mashlim. From this uptight and a bisschen besser in the Loshen Netzach. What does it mean in winning? So the dogma of them is that if you have a person who's going out to battle, so for us is gegangen auf Milchama because he believes in the king and he believes in the mission, he believes in the country, so Sai, he was convinced in Seichel, and Sai in Hergish, he feels a loyalty and he feels a passion, he feels the connection to identity. Yeah, it's nicht stand the arbeit of the Meshuach Milchama is to give a gesunte drasha, which is going to be Me'er Hergish. That's going to be the fuel on what the Milchama will be. The Metzias is aber that in the middle of a battle, when his friend already died, and he had to schon vegetan da, and he lost half his food, and he's in himself. The terror is that all the svaras and Allah hasbaras and all ideologies is out the window, and the hergish, nicht nur is the hergish not here for the country, nor if he has a hergish bichlal, it's a fakert hergish. He's frustrated and he's upset and he wants to go home. So, what keeps him going? Why is he still going to continue? So, it must come from a place in Nefesh where we have to win. We have to be consistent. We're going to pull through. So, on the one hand, this Netzach V'Heit is a very pashut thing. On the other hand, it brings a consistency. And that's going to make him fight a battle for something he doesn't understand or doesn't feel for. And that's real loyalty. It's the art of, in the sprach of the Amalek Chassidische sprach, the Azeh Nitandish. Azeh das. Emos Azeh Nitandish, it can't change. Yeah. So, that's the marshal in the Lulav sagt man. Yeah, there's the Hadassim. Hadassim is the Areach Anatam, which is Midas. That's why we have a lot of Hadassim. And the Arav is a Shnei Badi Arav. So the original Hadassim is 3, because it's Chesed Gvura Tiferes. And the Shnei Badi Arav is Netzach V'Heit. So it's a state that the Hadassim should cover the Aravas. That's our meaning. That's why we take more and more Hadassim. Because the Teichen Einen is Netzach V'Heit should be covered. A lebendige, geschmacke, gesunde Mensch should be on fire. He has a chayis from the midas, and a man is a lebendig. Aber, what happens if the midas go away? I mean, for the same price we said I could grow, and you could have 36 hadasim, so you could have less. The Shnei Badi Arav was something which they're covered over, but they don't change. Their number doesn't grow. And because it doesn't grow, it's impossible to shrink. He is what he is. You could rely on it. That's the mile of the Arave. Was is the Arave? The Pashte Yid. Hat nicht kein Seichel, hat nicht kein Midas, hat gar nicht getan, nicht kein Recht. Ist Netzach V'Heit. Ja. Das ist ein Prat in Netzach V'Heit. Netzach Miloshen Nitzchius. Consistency. It's always going to be there. The noch is the noch a prat. In Toshin Tes, the Friedrich Rebbe is marchiv that there's also pshittis in Netzach V'Heit, which there isn't in the Meichen and Midas. Meaning, it's not complicated, it's not murkiv. There's no reason for it to be. It just is. The tnu of Netzach V'Heid is, I can't explain why. As Eidos, I'm loyal. Masha'en Kein Seichel Midas is Murkiv. And this is taka the reason why this changes and this doesn't. This is the first chiluk we made, that this is because shaykh to change. And this not, the reason is because this is Pashut and this is Murkiv. Dennoch is da a dritte Sache. And this is already more shaykhis to our minor, the takeif. You see in Netzach V'Heid a takeif, a power, a passion, which there isn't in Meichen HaMitzvahs. And that's the surprising part. Maybe if you tell me consistency, good, it's a glump. A tree grows and shrinks. A stone stays where he is because he's dead. Does that mean a tifere Sache? That he's stronger. In other words, you see a sirirt on a tifere art in nefesh. The Pashat Amchasha for them is where you see Netzach every day in an argument or in a game. Yeah? And two people sit down to play a game and they sat down for pleasure. And within 5 minutes, Yedereina schwitzt and he's nervous and he has to win. And if I don't win, then there's no taking to it. And he's not going to lose because there's nothing to lose. It's a game. And the reason you're here is you came to spend good time with other people. But once you ma'ere the midas hanetzach sheben nefesh, is vertus meshugi. And it's kilo irer on my mitzias if I don't win. And the emphasis is I have the same thing in conversations with every people. Every day I'm with people. We start a discussion, trying to figure out pshat in the Gemara. And within a few minutes, the discussion is not what's pshat, the discussion is who's right. And in order that I should be right, I'm ready to do everything. I'll bring mimercha gavi lachmech for fakrim in the sugi, I'll say a modna svara. I'll even change the topic and I'll convince you that I said what you said and you said what I said. The ikar is there should be other. I have to win. The point is already the agenda. We sat down to no pshat. Now there's a new agenda. I have to win at any cost. So these three inyanim, the nitzchius, the pshitis, and the takev, are all simonim that where does Netzach V'Heid come from? A tifere place in the nefesh, it comes from the etzama nefesh, which is higher. The reason it's pashut is because it's taka higher than any other cover. And the reason why I can't change is because this is who I am. I can't, you could change is always going to be in a prat, in a certain biti of a thing. You can't change the thing itself. You know, but pastures, you could take a table and you could change it. But you'll change its color. You could change it. You could change its texture. You can't take a table and make him into a chair. Then it's not a table anymore. It's not called changing. It's called replacing. Voseris could never change. Etzem can't change because this is who I am. You could change details. So my mind you could change. My heritage you could change. You can't change my Netzach because this is who I am. Because this is my spine. This is why the expression of who I am is ich bin a soldat. I'm gonna continue. There's nothing to be chazer. Und al derech zeh is verstandig why there's such a takeoff because it's like an irrational thing which is being touched in my nefesh. Yeah. Therefore, you see that this Inyan HaMesiras Nefesh is Nizgala Dafke by Anoshim Pshutim. Because the Inyan of Netzach V'Heid is connected to the Etzem, he comes from the Etzem, is therefore, he's through him could be Nizgala in HaMesiras Nefesh, which Mesiras Nefesh comes from the Etzem HaNefesh. Und das ist, was steht, dass Moshe Rabbeinu hat Mekane gewendet in the Yidden, von nichts zu der Mashiach, because by them, Mesiras Nefesh was the most basic guns. Now, Bezer Gufe, just Pavolim, that there is sometimes you have a marshal in Elam Shpatim Eter, you have in different places. In Masber, the reason why Mesiras Nefesh could be in his gala through Netzach V'Heid is because he is Pashat, and Mamela is not stira. Atzir is a stira to Gili of Etzem HaNefesh. Seichel is a stira to get an Etzem HaNefesh. Masha'en came Netzach V'Heid, it's Pashat. It's like a Pashat, you know, like we always say the story of a king who had a crown. He wants to hang up the crown, so he's not going to hang up if he doesn't have a hook. So he's not going to put on the head of one of his sarim because one of them will think that maybe it's a pastake. So he'll put the crown on the head of one of his soldiers, or his pashat avodim, one of his slaves, because over there there won't be a machshava zar. Why? Because what is he? He is a hook. Das ist Is can't tragen the Kra in Chach. He's not shaykhis to them because he has zero shaykhis. It's not stira. Or even Amal Zakman, even more pashto marshal, is a very old marshal. It says from the Bill Paritcher, Shigma from Freer, that the Melech, when he wants to get undressed or he goes to sleep, he's not going to allow that there should be anyone in the room. He's not going to allow a sar. He's not going to allow anyone. Why? It's a pasnish. The uftu of a evet pashat is that he could be in the room. There is dort and da the schlepper, the slave, is there. Why? Because not stira to me. So the melech could be legamre be his galus if he's a pashat person. But the Rebbe in Ekim Chelik Teski Yodua learns tifer. That's not the types of Netzach V'Heid just allows for Pshittis HaNefesh to be in his gala. Mesiras Nefesh could be in his gala on the Ekvaim, because the Ekvaim are nicht consider, nor because he's a Keli. Why is he a Keli for Etzem HaNefesh? Because the Tchune of Netzach V'Heid is Kanal, Tekev, Pshittis, Nitzrius, and therefore it's a Keli for Mesiras Nefesh. It's not just that it's not a stira for Mesiras Nefesh. In Yonei is Etzem. He's an expression of Etzem. Ad kan is viseretzech the Indian bichlal in Chassidus, with Beikar, Tafshin Tes, and these places which describe the Vart of Netzach. In our Maimer in Bosi Legani, it's miyusad on Teres Chaim, Pashas B'Shalach. There's a new slant on this whole Indian of Netzach Veit. Till now, we were talking about the Ish Pashut. Where does Netzach bin is Gala? Dafka by Ish Pashut. So let me fragen, by Chacham Gadol, so Enechanam, the Netzach is Behelam. And it doesn't, he's not a Caliph from Mesiras Nefesh in the same way. Comes this Maimer, really, it's in Alter Rebbe, and it's in Memorial of the Murazakin in Yoni. Sorry, no. In Pashas B'Shalach. In Pashas B'Shalach, in Memorial of the Murazakin. Over there, it's more Bekitzer, and Teres Chaim, it's P'sazei B'Archav. And what? The Midas HaNetzach is in Izgala Dafke by a Melech. So we're taking a whole new direction. Till now we're saying by Ish Pashut. Now we're saying by a Melech. And in order to explain this, Sehet Tzachar a ganze lange Moshel. Now in Tafshin Yud, it's very bekitzer, but the Moshel it's important to get all the pratim straight. So we're going to go back a bit. Let's go through it slowly and make sure we chap the story properly. But you have a king. Now, this king, there was somebody, it could be a sar koton or something simple, was ma'arer on him, was mischatzev to him. Now, there are places where it says this whole story of Netzach V'Heid, Moshel, if you see Sharat Shuvah, Perek Zayin. The Mittler Rebbe talks about it, that there's somebody coming to be ma'arer on the life of the king. So therefore the king will go and fight to save his life. Over here we're not talking about that. We're not going to save his life. Fakert. There's some narishkeit. Is that menazeh? Behektiv. The king has eitzrus. Why does the king have eitzrus? For a few reasons. Number one, he collects taxes. Number two, he's won wars and plundered countries, so collected their money and their eitzrus. Number three, he has b'Yerusha me'avesav and avis avesav, b'Yerusha, all these inyan. Now these inyanim, which the Melech has, nobody ever sees. So, afilo, Sedok Hamni Matzavim, where people would want to see it, is a Sar Gadol or a Chulu, and weiß das nicht. Why not? So the interesting lashon of the Mittler Rebbe is because it's Eine Lefi Chveide. Eine Lefi Chveide to show these things. Now, this is, try to explain to an American that there's something called covet, and not showing something is, I mean, today, in the heutige narische Welt, covet means attention. Covet means fame. I mean, so verkehrt. It's my biggest covet is alles sollen wissen, was ich hab. What does it mean that it's eine lefi chveide? It's a secret. No, I'm not giving it away. No one's allowed to see it. And if yeah, then it's a chafalerim and covet. So the was liegt dort, darf man sagen, is that there's the real musig of covet is that this I be'etzem with the lashon is covet Hashem haster dover. Covet implies privacy. The pastors, you respect the person, it means that you don't interfere in his life. That's covet. This says there's a part of me which is beyond, which is not touchable. What's the covet of a melech? As there is a atzmi. There's something about me which no one's going to ever know. If everything I am is available to the public, is mitvas bin ich. In other words, what makes him a king is these eitzrus. That's the Agav Mistama why, when he conquers a country, he plunders those eitzrus. And he takes those eitzrus home, and that's the type, I won that melech, because I took his eitzrus. This is a very important thing to understand, that an eitzer, by definition, is not for to spend. You ask a pashta person, there's two options. What am I going to do with gold? Either you spend it, or you show it. You make it like a nice gold and a jewelry, and you show it, so now you look nice. Is heik der Mensch nicht anzuverstehen, was is covered? There's something called owning gold. I have jewelry which is wasam ein. Nobody ever saw. And that makes me into a mitzis, into a real mitzis. That's the melucha. Now, when a pesasar cotton was ma'arer on my mitzis. So what's going to happen is a crazy thing. These eitzres were never nizgal. Even when it came to a matzev of tainuk, as I state beferish, he was never megalit. What says? If the melech would go and look at these eitzres, he would have a big tainuk. He would also have a big tainuk to show other people the eitzres. Why doesn't he do it? Because his covet is more important than his tainuk. I am more important than my expression of I. Tainuk is the richtig, it's stuff an experience. It's not me. I am not available for that. The only places I'll ever be shown is the dogma is by his son's chasana. Why? Because over there is the meluch. My son is the meluch. Or when he's celebrating the fact that he's the melech for like a Chashvedish, he's melech for so many years. Good, he's celebrating melucha. It's the past. Now it's kilu gili ha'etzem. So then these eitzres are allowed to be shown. But normally there's no way to show them besides for netzach. Kommt das, that's the hechrech, that netzach is tifer in nefesh v'tainu. I'm saying this is the pashta cheshbon in the mamar. That netzach must be tifer, because for tainu I'm not megala the eitzres, even to myself, and for netzach I am. Not only am I megala the eitzres, I spend the eitzres. Now over here it's important to understand. Spending means that it's not coming back. What am I spending the eitzres on? I'm spending the eitzres on mozen, as I state, mozen for the soldiers. This is the taich is that now I'm spending all the money to buy to make my country bigger. Let's buy more shetach. The net. I'm spending it on people. That they should have supper. And it's no return. I'm spending on ammunition, which is going to be shot, and it's never going to be used again. That's the taich, the lotion bizbuza eitzres. It's plundering, it's spending. It's nicht zurückkommen, geendigt. Then noch is da, as nicht nur am I spending the thing, that he himself is acing with Kishrim Melchama, bis as a mashal chayiv minay. Does that mean, as the Melech brings out his midas on Netzach? And Netzach is different than all the inyanim in the Melech. Now, over here, we're going in a whole new direction than talking about the Ishpashit. Till now, we're talking as there's a takeif in Netzach Veit. This shittus of a person is connected to his etzem. It's working b'keach ha'etzem. Very good. Could I say that etzem is the hisgalus by him? Beferish nicht. No. Fakert, if you're going to meet this soldier who's in the trenches, and it's continuing midas on netzach, he's fighting on, lamreista I lost his chayes, his geschmack. Are you going to see gilia etzem? Fakert, you're going to look at his eyes, he's in ganzen verloschen, and he's bringing himself, that he got himself into this, and he's missing home. Elamai, ich kann nicht anders. He's loyal. That's what's happening. He's loyal. The midas hanetzach over here is a tife expression of nefesh, of etzem nefesh, but it's not coming out it's not coming out begili. It's a hashlocha, let's call it like that. It's a byproduct of the etzem. Masha'enkim by Melech, we're talking about andere zach. His covet was touched, or his inyan malchus was misared by this sarkot. So now he's going to go full force. He's going to come roaring out, and he's going to go for battle. It's a gili of etzem nefesh.
This is limited to Melech?
Oh. So, state in our Maimer that, and it says it also in Tafshin Teres in a few places, that who has inyan hameluch, who has this inyan of netzach, dafke a God, nishkin kotten. In other words, a regular person doesn't have so much mitzvah netzach, and dafke, and who's the gresta God? That's the melech.
In St. Pilamis, you see people that the Mashal Chaim Mineged for Disney and also for a stupid argument. You said earlier.
Okay. Yeah. It's just the Magdir. So what's the answer to that? Is by a regular person, most things are not negay. Yeah? In other words, we're pastures. If a sar cotton is ma'arer on my netzias, or is a sar cotton is ma'arer on the fact that it's not, I'm the only one in the world, that's fine, that's legitimate. What brings up Amimidas HaNetzach? It has to be something was get mir onrir, which is negay to me. So obviously every person is born with Midas HaNetzach. But at what point is this person going to become fighting Bligvul. It has to be that I feel the heat. So it has to be something very important to me. So a regular Pashut person, most things are not negeh. Masha'enkin the Melech, he's a Atzmi, which means that his Etzem is Begili. Etzem Begili is a time that there's nothing in the world which could be a stira to me, and everything has to go exactly like me. And any prat which is not like me is Achaz Dase. Why? Because it's my whole Metzias Alts Melech. My whole Metzias Alts Melech is that it goes my way. So Shinish Negeh of us. Then Musig you only have by a Melech. So a normal person will have bepashtos more biti of mitzvah netzach or less biti of mitzvah netzach. Yeah, as it states, you have in let's see, the Rebbe Rashab in Ayin Aleph. There's a mimer in Ayin Aleph. It's a hanoche. It's in the back of Ayin Aleph. It's a hanoche. To look at that again. See there's two mamorim which we only have the hanochas. There's Kiseitze Samachei. That's in the Kavitz. This is a mimer in Ayin Aleph. It's Mitzuyin all over. So over there he says that there is shvachere expressions of mitzvah netzach. That's by regular people, and at some point he'll give up. The melech will be every prat and business of. So really, let's just be magdi properly over here. Really, who has real mitzvah netzach? The melech. A regular person will have expressions of mitzvah netzach. Not the real mitzvah. What's with a pashta mensch? A pashta mensch is a keli af mitzvah netzach. He has a bitui of mitzvah netzach in him. So this whole word of a pashta person fighting on is not the mitzvah netzach in its fullest form. The real musar of mitzvah netzach is that the etzem nefesh is begili, and der far is berememus. Und jeder sagt, was macht aus Merumim, so he's going to go and fight business off. That's the word of the Melech Allah. Come says that the Melech and the Ish Pashut are the two extremes. It says the two sides, and both of them Netzach is Mizgala in a different Eifen. And then you have a regular, most normal people don't work like that. The Pashtus. A regular person, Abit Mitzeichel, I mean, sometimes yes, sometimes no, but it works if you take another. So this is the Lashon that Motzei Shabbos that the Rebbe added in the Maimer, which wasn't Friday night. The Rebbe zugelegt as Zbara. What's the taich that Dafke by a Melech? Because the Melech is then etzem is beis galus. There's Gili nefesh, and that's what makes him. That's what makes by him as yet the prat is negeh business of. Okay, is Adkan is the Klolos HaMoshel v'Mezetos by the Melech. I mean, obviously there's many pratim over here. There's also Shtal Navzei and Bezer Gufe in different burim. That we'll have to see next time. Just want to finish off with one word. This Nukudah that we just said, that there's Kovet, and the Kovet is the taich that it's Be'etzem should be Behelim. And as soon as it becomes Eis Behelim, that's it. It's wasted. It's like, when I have a private secret, and once that part of my never is gal, ich hab das changed. It's a geworden, there's no going back. And that's the type that the Melech sells his stuff, his Eitzeris, and there's probably no going back. You can't buy it back. It's gendic. It was wasted on Mozen, on Shtussen. Why? Because he's spending it on people, on the Anshe Chai. So the Rebbe, in Al Maimer and in Amar Beshi Yudalet, it's beferish, it's very clear that the Rebbe is saying as a Chiddush, is that Bizbuz Eitzeris is Gili Achsidus. Usually, Meret Veg Nira Shamayim. The Rebbe always touches in Chassidus. As the Rabbeim is in a Megal Chassidus. Now, so there's two Nakudas over here. Chassidus Be'etzem should be a secret. There should be a chelik of Torah or a chelik of the Eibishter which is not accessible. Und das in Legea. As it darf sein. Es ist doch der chelik from the Eibishter which is good. Beide Elam Manhige. There's a chelik of the Eibishter which is gegeben Torah for the Welt. It's called Torah Dasiya. That's the chelik apshat of Torah. Then there's a chelik of Torah which is supposed to be sod. But Torah does not wissen. And it shouldn't have been Nizgala. When was an Nizgala for people? A Yid is Beis Alfus, a Poshet Yid, is for them the Evan Shebekeser HaMelech is a Tzeribin for the Maila of a Yid. That's the Pele of Gilei Chassidus. So the Rebbe touched us. What's the word of the Anshe Chayil over here? It doesn't in Yidin. Yidelach. Nicht sorry Pekidim. So it says that how does the Melech give it? The Melech gives it to the Rosh Pekidei HaChayil, and he gives it to the Sorei HaChayil, until it reaches the Anshe Chayil B'Pei. The purpose of selling the Eitzeres, wasting them, is one thing. That the Pashat zone that is on Haben Supper. In other words, the Matara is for this Pashat Yid. Kommt es, was is the, mit Abteilung bis Eitzeres, in the Chassidus, is what's the Matara over here is, as a Pashat Yid should take an Eitzeres, Chassidus, and use it for Pashta Zachen. And it's wasting it, and beferish, and there's no going back. Chassidus, you can't, like, someday say, okay, that's it, let's make Chassidus a secret again, let nobody know about it. Emos in this Gala, in this Gala. It's ausgegossen, it's vergossen, und the average of Bekeser HaMelech has been zerrieben. You can't stick the pieces together again. It's gendigt. But this is alt for a Yid to fight the last fight of Der Shvi, durchzuführen, durchzubrechen, bringen the goal. It's all for ein Chassidus all the stuff. Das ist adds a emek into the ganze Mais. All right. Next time we'll go through a bit more the way it's over here in Legani and compared to other places. What's punkt the opposite in the Moshel in verschiedene Fall.